Hi, everybody. It's Susan, and I'm finally getting around to this Capricorn full moon, etc., etc. It's quite a lot going on in pretty much a 24-hour period. So I'm going to break it down a little bit, and then there are some elements that we're going to do in separate videos because it's going to be just too much to focus on absolutely everything. But I think the full moon is a great summary of what's happening. So just 6 hours before the full moon, we have Mercury stationing retrograde. And indeed also just the day before the full moon, so from Sunday night, the 28th into the Monday, the 29th, universal time. I use universal time always. We have Mars ingressing in its not so favorite sign. It's a very busy sign for Mars. Mars goes into Gemini, and it's interesting that at the full moon chart, Mars is actually the ascendant ruler for this particular chart. But also, because of the way that the rulerships work, we've got the moon, which is in detriment here in Capricorn, ruled by Saturn, which in turn is ruled by Mars, which in turn is ruled by this Mercury, which has just stationed retrograde 6 hours before. So there's a lot of energy of change in this full moon itself, and yet things are not entirely in their happy place, you could say. Things are working in ways that it requires a little more effort, and there can be a feeling of too much. I don't think we need astrology to point that out. Also, one day, in fact, again, 6 hours later, we've got Jupiter on the same day as the full moon. We've got Jupiter moving into Leo, and I will do a separate video about that. But it's part of this whole dynamic because it's ruled Jupiter continues to be ruled by this moon, and it's now entering Leo with a rulership, a new rulership that becomes a solar rulership instead of a lunar rulership. But because when Jupiter enters into Leo, it's ruled by the sun, that in turn is ruled by the moon, which in turn is ruled by this Saturn, in turn ruled by Mars. Finally, the ultimate dispositor is this Mercury retrograde. So even when Jupiter shifts into Leo, there's going to be something that's not quite right, and that will require some re-examination. It will require a certain amount of readjustment, and that could be a really good way of looking at this whole period of Mercury retrograde, which is very much emblematic of this end of June phase, which takes us into an incredibly historical, um, I should say historic, not historical, but historic moment in time, meaning something that will generate something for the history books as we go into July. Throughout July, it's going to be a busy and unusual period of time. But as we're going through it, there's going to be a whole lot of like, wait, what? And having to kind of reassemble, renavigate, renegotiate, go over things again and again and again. Whatever format of plans or ideas you might have at this time, I would take extremely lightly because just the description of this full moon, which I'll describe more in detail in a minute, plus the energy around it and the energy that takes us from this full moon directly into the flavor of July is it's really chaotic. There's just such a lot going on here that we will have to kind of just sit down and comb our hair again at the end of July, just in time for the eclipses that are happening on the 12th and 28th of August. And in fact, Mercury itself is just going to be leaving Cancer. I think it's the 9th, universal time again, the 9th of August. Mars moves into Cancer on the 11th of August, and the eclipse is on the 12th of August. So again, we're going to have that flavor of a lot going on in this whole period of time. So we really are looking at about 7 weeks of extreme energy of change. So that's the story of life, isn't it? Change is what the whole story of life is all about. And that's the only constant, as the saying goes. Mars, at the time of this full moon, which is, by the way, the exaltation ruler of this full moon. So it's really this Mercury is really central to all of these stories. The exaltation ruler, the actual ruler of the moon. Mars is squaring the nodes really powerfully as it ingresses Gemini. And it also is pretty close to a conjunction. It's 2 degrees, 2.5 degrees away from a conjunction with Uranus. And it's very much building up to the early July phase of conjunction, which perfects, of course, on the 4th of July, as you might have already heard. You certainly heard me speaking about these things. By the way, for the outer configurations, the outer planet, modern planet configurations, I've already done a video with S.J. Anderson, and that we did, I think, in April. And we talk a lot about this configuration, and I pointed to the fact that it repeats in 2026, 2027. And that is something that we're generating this new thing starting now, but it continues for many years to come. The bigger outer configuration, I will do a separate video on again, and that will be for all signs. So there's so much to say at this time because there's so much change that it almost makes me want to sort of sit down and say nothing at all because, this is the sort of paradox of being in these times of immense transformation. It feels like there's no point in really trying to describe something because then the next thing comes up and the next thing comes up. And there's so many moving pieces. And we want to be in the awareness that we have to live in the moment. We have to go through these changes. We have to be in this situation. And in many ways, that's what Capricorn is all about. It's taking responsibility. It's doing the thing that is necessary, the thing that's right in front of you, taking responsibility for that or feeling like you should anyway. And because that's part of the moment in time, it would be good to remember what this signification of Capricorn is, which is all about being responsible and doing the right thing. It's not in terms of the moon is in detriment in Capricorn because, of course, it rules Cancer, where the sun is in opposition, which gives us the full moon, the brightness of the sun illuminating the moon from Capricorn, the other side of the zodiac from Cancer. And when the moon is in Capricorn, it's not able to access easily the emotional sensitivity of Cancer. And it's very pragmatic. So it shows affection, it shows its concern in practical ways, doing the right thing. And we can see that as a metaphor for these times. Just buck up, chin up, carry on, soldier on, keep calm and carry on, as the Second World War saying went. And this would be a good way for you to sort of metabolize what this time is all about, because there is so much change that to try and grapple with all the minutia of it is overwhelming because we also then forget to actually experience the moment to moment change, which for many people will go unnoticed in some ways. I mean, collectively, we will definitely see something as we unfold through this year and the next 4 years or 5 to 6 years that this is really impacting us. But it's important to recognize that we're each going to be living in our own rhythm around this and not to obsess too much about the astrology. And I do say that quite a lot. It's not to get too hung up on astrology. Don't keep coming back and checking in, and certainly don't do that every day. Live your life. Take some information, digest it, and live your life. And that's very much what the energy of Capricorn is all about. Just get on with it. Sort yourself out. And, there's this whole story of mastery. Everybody is referring to somebody who is somebody, the authority, that this is Capricorn as well. Who's the authority? Who is the figure I should be listening to? Who's going to tell me what to think and do? Who's going to tell me, do I need to bring an umbrella today? Is the what is the expert of the day telling us? And this is something that we need to really look at as we're going through these changing times, because we're still in this larger phase of Pluto in a sextile to Neptune, where there's a whole lot of stuff that's being told to us and has been for a century, basically, certainly since the 1940s, very, very powerfully. And that is propaganda. It's stuff that we are being told we need to know, or we should be afraid of, or we should hate, or we should love, or whatever, and not necessarily what's coming from our heart. So this may be where we find then the Mercury retrograding at this time really useful, because Mercury in Cancer can really take us inwards into our felt sense of what it is to be alive. It's going to be a lot to do with our need for security and how we may need to re-examine that. It may be that there are practical steps that are required. We'll see that sign by sign as we go forward. But to keep in mind that that's part of the ultimate dispositor of this full moon is actually this Mercury. In so many ways, it's playing a really important role right now, where it is kind of like just sit down, just think about things, feel your way through this, listen and absorb. And don't try to wrestle this to the ground. Don't try and figure it out and know you've got the answer, because we don't have the answer. In fact, we don't have a clue. I'm talking to you here just because I kind of do this, but I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know what's going to happen. All I can say is astrologically what seems to be coming. But you're going to have to figure out your way. You're going to have to be the one that takes yourself through all of these different steps and gets to this place of understanding what this means for you. And that has to come from an embodied experience, which again takes us back to Cancer in so many ways, which is this internal experience of life and coming back into the safety and the security of the arms of the mother or the womb, the origin of life itself. Cancer is a mute sign. It's this water sign that is all about the feeling nature of life and the intuition. It's the first of the water signs. Both Cancer and Capricorn are cardinal signs, so very dynamic in so many ways. But Cancer is water, and Capricorn is earthly. And it's just this earthy, material, three-dimensional experience of life, the practical stuff of life. And Cancer is very much the emotional stuff of life. So there's going to be a part of you that needs to just get on with it, needs to do stuff, and you realize, okay, this is the thing I need to get on with. This is the thing I need to step up into, or I need to recognize that's where I'm responsible. That's where I need to put my attention at this moment. And with Mercury, there's going to be perhaps a tendency to go into reflection, possibly from the past. Cancer represents the past. It's everything to do with what has come before. It represents the natural fourth house, which it just happens to be lining up with in this particular chart as I'm giving this chart for the 30th of June, Greenwich, which means it's another way of saying the universal time. And this is about 1 a.m. in universal time. So what we're looking at here is this story of the natural zodiac or the natural chart. And it really does carry that flavor of what is intimate and safe and our lineage and where we come from and who are our people. That means in the family, but also our people in terms of the family of nations, so that the greater sort of fatherland, motherland concept. So these are all very much uppermost in our minds over the next month, but particularly. But again, this is something that is showing the way in a historic moment of change. And so we're moving into something that is quite new. And what's interesting in terms of this full moon is that where we find Chiron, and I've done a separate video on that a few days ago, Chiron just into the first degree of Taurus, it's actually going to be at the same degree point 18 months from now when this cycle, this lunar family cycle, closes out. So I'll just give you those dates now because they're very interesting to follow on with. I will provide them in the description below this video and in the first pinned comment, along with hopefully timestamps. I'm not sure that I'll immediately be able to do the timestamps for this video, but I will get to them as soon as possible. And I always appreciate it when you help me with that, because it is actually quite time consuming to do these timestamps. So what I'm doing here, I have another video about that explains what these lunar gestation families are. There's a cycle of 3 years from beginning to end of these cycles. And every 9 months, which is why we call them these gestation phases, there's this quarter moon phase, and then the full moon phase, and then the third quarter moon phase, and then finally ending up with the new moon phase. So from new moon to new moon, it's 3 years. I mean, we can take it from full moon to full moon as well, but it's more logical to start with the new moon phase and move on. Um, there's a debate about that. I feel it's more logical. In India, you'll get a lot of people that say, no, 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 it's full moon to full moon. So you do what you want to do. But anyway, these are the dates you're getting. This particular cycle that we're in, that is this full moon phase that is coming to fruition, or seeing something that is in our awareness now, that we're taking our awareness of in this Capricorn zone on the 30th of June this year. It started with the Capricorn New Moon on the 30th of December 2024. And that was at 9 degrees 43 arc minutes of Capricorn. So you can think about that as part of your chart configuration, what that was all about for you. That was, of course, closing out the previous 3-year cycle. So you can check back if you want on the three-year cycle. Each time I do these lunations, I give these lunar dates. And again, the video that I did to describe all of this is there from sort of early 2025. You'll see it in my channel, but I might just I'll pin it below. Maybe just do that as a habit, just so you can learn more about that. The first quarter or the opening square of this particular cycle was 9 months ago. And so that was the 29th of September, 2025. So in recent memory for many of us, although so much has happened that it's kind of like, okay, I'm just going to check my diary. Where was I on the 29th of September? Because so many things go on at this in this rapid pace world that we live in. That was at 7 degrees and 5 arc minutes of Capricorn. That's when you get to this place where, from the beginning, where we were in December 2024, there's this point at the quarter moon phase where this action required. It's called the crisis of action phase, the opening quarter, the opening square. That's when you see the moon in the sky. It looks like a half moon. That's the half moon phase. And here we are now in that commitment phase. We've committed at that phase of September 2025. Now we're in that realization of what that commitment meant, or what we need to recognize is done, or we've done enough, and we have to let go and allow the process of closing out to start unfolding. It doesn't mean giving up. It just means you're recognizing that you've done up until this point what you needed to do, and now you're realizing what is the remainder, what's coming up next. And so here we're at this culmination point. This is the full moon phase here of the 30th of June. So for many of you, this will be the 29th of June. This will be in fact, on Monday. So that depends on where you are. So Greenwich Mean Time, or the Universal Time as it's called now, is on the 30th, just after midnight. So for people in North and South America, it's the 29th of June for you. 8 degrees and 14 minutes is this particular lunation. And this is the awareness. This is the culmination and the halfway point of that cycle that began at the end of 2024. And then we move into the third quarter phase. Now we're closing out, and we're realizing things that might still need to be addressed, or that need to be let go, or need to be dealt with. And at that point, it's the 30th of March next year. 30th of March 2027 is the closing square. That's at 9 degrees and 6 arc minutes of Capricorn. That is the crisis of consciousness, according to Dane Rudyard, with this notion of the squares and the phases of the moon. He attributed the psychological conscious awareness phases of the lunar phase, and the moon represents the mind. It represents the mind-body complex. So it's a very interesting, way of relating to the lunar phases. And and so that's going to be the 30th of March next year. And that will be where you do a course correction based on the final phases of the moon, which takes us right to the end of December. This whole 3-year cycle will close out on the 27th of December, 2027. So next year, 18 months from now. And that's going to be at 5 degrees and 50 arc minutes of Capricorn. That closes out the 3-year cycle, and it seeds the new cycle. So this cycle was seeded at the end of December, 30th of December, 2024, and it will conclude on the 27th of December, 2027. What's interesting about this whole phase is that it really does take in a lot of the energy of the moment, the times that we're in, because of all of the busyness or the activity of Cancer at this phase, at this time. But also, it's going to recall some of the things, we've got by retrograde movement. Chiron will be back at this same place in that December closing out phase. So the new cycle will be seeded with a retrograde Chiron at this same degree, 0 degrees of Taurus. If you have your Chiron at this degree, this is your story for the next 18 months. This is it. And then Chiron will station direct something like 2 weeks later. So into like the 10th or 11th of January, 2028, Chiron finally stations. But because of the shifting nodes, Chiron will be squaring the nodes at that point. So the nodes will, at that point, already be in the Cancer and Capricorn segment of the chart. So, or at least shifting towards that. It'll be the very, very ending, the beginning of the shift into Cancer Capricorn. So this is a really interesting dynamic of there'll be repeated patterns. And when that happens, by the way, the node, the south node will be with Mars at that time. So in a square to Chiron. So really interesting things to note about this particular cycle. Right. We're going to have a look at this full moon then, and then I'm going to go sign by sign. So I just wanted to show you this visual. Here we have the Mars ingress. We'll do it chronologically. The Mars ingress is the inner ring. It's very teeny weeny, I appreciate. But what I'm pointing to here is that the Mars ingress of the 28th overnight, so for you in North and South America, but in the evening for those of us here in Europe, going into Gemini, that's the 28th of June. Then one day later, a little bit more than a day later, we get the Capricorn full moon. Then we get the Mercury retrograde station. Sorry, whoops, back it up. First, we get the Mercury retrograde station. 6 hours later, we get the Capricorn full moon. Then 6 hours later, we get the Jupiter Leo ingress. Look at this. Look at how all these different events, very important in and of themselves, are lining up in rapid fire succession. So literally the only thing that's no longer lining up here is Jupiter ingressing Leo, but everything else is repeating this pattern all the way through. And finally the Jupiter ingress is the one thing that breaks the pattern. So a very interesting time of intensity, these days between the 28th of June and then let's call it the 1st of July, because really it's so slow when Jupiter moves into Leo. It takes a long time to go into the sign. So it's really going to be through the 30th of June and into the 1st of July. It's a really interesting time to be alive. Now, let's just come back here to the Capricorn full moon. I'm going to do separate videos for the other things and not for the Mercury station, Mercury retrograde. I will tell you a little bit about that now too, simply because that is built in to this, and I don't see the point in doing another video separately. The Mercury retrograde, as I said, is the ultimate dispositor of this moon and everything else that's happening, including even Jupiter. And so Mercury stations on, like I said, the 29th of June at 26 degrees, 15 arc minutes of Cancer, and then it will retrograde back. It'll take about 24 days, which is a longer cycle for usually around 21, 22 degrees, 22 days. This is going to be 24 days of a retrograde cycle. So Mercury will come back to 16 degrees for those of you who like that, and 18 arc minutes of Cancer. And it will station there. And then it will go all the way through. And that will be the station, by the way, is going to be on the 23rd of July. So again, this is why the Mercury is so important right now. It's not just the fact that it's a retrograde cycle or the fact that there's all these events taking place around the station, but Mercury is basically describing these events as they're going on. And so on the 23rd of July, Mercury will station direct at 16 degrees, 18 arc minutes, and then all the way through to the 9th of August. Is it the 9th of August? Yes, it goes into Leo finally. So the whole journey of Mercury will finish on the 9th of August. As I said, that's the 9th when Mercury goes in. It's the 11th when Mars then goes into Cancer, and then it's the 12th that we have this eclipse coming up. So again, it's going to be a busy shift, a busy changeover, but we will have learned a lot in the meantime, coming closer into ourselves. The other thing about the Mercury that can be interesting if you're tracking certain things, events and things that you want to follow, is that from the 12th of June, Mercury entered its shadow phase, meaning it hit that 16-degree point. And so from the 12th of June all the way through to, when does the shadow end? August the 6th. Mercury is in the retrograde shadow cycle. So from August the 6th, Mercury hits the 26-degree point where it is in retrograde now, and then it will continue its new journey from August the 6th till the 9th, before it leaves and goes into Leo. The fact that it's doing this in a square to Eris, I find interesting because Eris is all about where we feel frustrated or unseen or unadmired or not respected, let's say, not in a place of honor. It's where things get disrupted. And here again, we're looking at this cycle, a bigger cycle of things that will be a source of disruption in a novel way, in a way that we cannot know. We cannot describe what this is going to be like and be fully confident that it's going to be like that. And if you've been following me for a while, you'll know that I'm not one of these people who considers that this will be in any way easy, and that the fact that there are trines and sextiles baked in to this does not mean that it's going to be good. So a trine and a sextile is a flowing energy, but it keeps the momentum of whatever is already going flowing, and that is, as we can see in the last couple of years, something that has been challenging, let's say, for us individually. And I'll come back and talk more about that, especially with the Jupiter ingress that's going to be triggering that basket configuration. Le panier de Barbeau is known as, and that the notion of this basket, or some people call it a cradle formation, which is often seen as a container of something that is useful and constructive and so on. But we're looking at a novel configuration. These are not planets that we're so familiar with. In this particular configuration, we will not have ever seen this before. And I'm seeing more of a tendency to perpetuate things that are going to be difficult before they become easy. And I've been saying that since Pluto ingressed Aquarius. And so since 2022, when I came on to YouTube, you'll be able to find videos if you want to go back into those early moments of Pluto going into Aquarius, and you can find the videos I've done around Neptune, for example, going into Aries, and then with the ingress of Uranus in Gemini, explaining what the potential challenges are as well. And that's again where I come back to the Capricorn full moon, which says, sort yourself out. Make sure you know what you're responsible for and what you can do about it. Um, are you one of these people who is constantly referring to the expert and asking for somebody else's opinion or advice about how to live your life? And I'm not suggesting you shouldn't, by the way, get a consultation astrologically or otherwise with somebody who can help you. What I'm saying is, if you rely entirely on that and really start to lose your center, you're going to be incredibly destabilized by these times, which require a lot of focus and centering. I did a post on the solstice. I didn't have time to do an actual video, so I posted on the solstice, and my newsletter was about that for those who received that. Maybe even on Instagram if you're following me there. I don't post a lot there, so almost like not really worth following me, but there you go. It's what that was about. This was where I was pointing out that this notion of change and the notion of the timing of things. There's a season for everything. And I posted the Ecclesiastes from the Bible, the prayer from, or at least the passage from Ecclesiastes, which is something to meditate on. And I also think that a lot of you, if you're my age, are in your mind, as soon as you hear that, you're hearing turn, turn, turn. I want to know in the comments how many of you have been obsessing around that turn, turn, turn when you read that, because that was me as I was writing it. I couldn't get that out of my head. Um, if you're too young to understand, ask your parents. And so this time where we have to become quite self-reliant, yet at the same time step up into helping each other. So we become self-reliant in terms of understanding what our gifts and talents are, what we can use, what we can do. Are we good at cooking? Are we into caring for animals, caring for children? Are we a bricklayer? Can we build things? What's the thing that we can do that is actually practical, especially in terms of Mercury? This is about dexterity, using your hands. You've got Mars in Gemini. That's quite literally the signature of an engineer. It's the builder, the one who knows how to do stuff. And this energy that's very strong right now requires of us to have novel solutions to really novel problems. And so it's not to to terrify anybody. I have no idea what's going to happen, but just to say, do prepare for whatever this might be about. And and to have a sense that you have something that you can do in scenarios where you have suddenly nobody to ask for guidance. Where am I going to be? How am I going to place myself? Who can I share things with? And also, what can I share? How can I reach out and be of assistance, be of some kind of use to others? Now, interestingly, at this time, we also have a square between the full moon, a T square with Neptune, and that can bring some creative inspiration. It can bring some kind of ideas of things that could be inspired or new ways of seeing yourself and how you might contribute to things. And that's especially true because Mars is ruling Neptune now from a place of sextile. It's moving into a sextile and it's going to be perfecting that roughly around the 4th of July as well. So 4th of July, Mars moves into a conjunction with Uranus and then sextiles Neptune. So I think this is very much in the orb already. We can consider that it's already happening and that it's a continuum from this point on, even from when you're hearing me now. These are things that are rolling into each other. They're already underway, and we don't need to wait for a specific day or moment to say that something's happening or it becomes now important. We're in the flow of it already. And especially because if we see that in that sense of being able to prepare and work with things that we recognize we need to tend to ourselves and take responsibility for. And then I think that we will go forward with a lot less anxiety and worry. Um, and again, as I mentioned, the square from Mercury to Eris can really make us realize where we have felt that there's something we need to do based on this feeling of not having been honored, not having been seen. And that can be in an individual sense within the context of relationships or within the context of whatever dynamic it shows in your chart, but also as the individual versus the collective. And now we're going to get another flavor of that as Jupiter goes into Leo and then opposes Pluto in Aquarius. So this is a big part of this moment. If you haven't already seen that post or my blog or don't receive my newsletter, then you'll find that on my channel where I talk about the solstice and how it's setting us up. So that was the solstice was last Sunday, and that whole station, the standstill of the sun was the beginning of this phase of what we're experiencing all the way through the summer. And it takes in all the way through till the third week of September when we get the equinox. So this is the flavor of this moment, and the Capricorn full moon is showing us what to do about that. So very interesting time and a really interesting time also for you to take responsibility where you could, where you know you can, and to step into that place of integrity, which is also a Capricorn word. Where can I show up and be part of the solution and not part of the problem? We find that Saturn, which of course is ruling the lunation, but still under the rulership of Mars and therefore Mercury, et cetera, um, which comes back to the moon. This whole chain of events is all part of this dynamic of Saturn right now, which is already within the degree that it will station retrograde at on the 26th of July. And at that retrograde station, Saturn will be at 14 degrees and 45 arc minutes of Aries, so nearly 15 degrees of Aries. And this is where Saturn will be for the next several weeks. So all the way from now through July and into August, Saturn is at that point. And so it's also Saturn is saying, like, hold your ground, do something, but don't rush into things. Don't run around like a headless chicken. Don't panic. Do the right thing. Take the responsibility. Check in with your emotions, but don't become emotional. Don't get drawn in to nonsense because you're wasting your energy, you're wasting your emotions, and you're also creating chaos around you by being overly emotional. So a lot of this energy is actually baked into this moment in time. And if we work with it in that more sort of sophisticated Saturnian way, which just says, slow it down, we're going to get better results, I think. So without going through any future panic or forecasting into things that we genuinely don't know, we can save ourselves and other people a lot of stress, a lot of energy wasted otherwise. Um, so the Saturn focus here also in Aries is also suggesting where we actually have some level of restriction in terms of our personal capacity, our personal input, let's say. And, just as I was speaking with an American client earlier today, and saying that there was this Cambridge study that was brought up in the Corbett Report. And you all should be looking at the Corbett Report if you're not already. But earlier today, I was watching the Corbett Report, and he made an allusion to this report that was done by Cambridge University in the UK in about 2014, so quite some time ago. In fact, when Jupiter was last in Cancer, this report came out, which showed very plainly that through a lot of research extending over a long period of time and much legislation, that individuals have very little impact over what happens in their government in the United States. Now, this you could extrapolate into almost any other country, but not only because you have exceptions like Switzerland or other places like that. But just to say that, again, if we're waiting for the authority figure, again, we're talking Capricorn here, if we're waiting for the one to tell us what to do or how things should be, and we're planning on sort of experiencing some kind of benefit by voting or by going out and saying, I want this to be different, you'll be waiting a long time. And what this suggests to me with Mars coming into Gemini, the engineer, it's like, go, go, go. Let's do this thing. Let's create. Let's make. Let's be busy here, especially with Uranus, be creative and inventive, squaring the nodal axis. And then Mercury itself retrograde, sort of looking at things historically, the problems of recent times or past times that I can resolve if I go back and start to look at what I need to be secure. And recognizing that Mercury even still will be in a square with Saturn when it stations direct again as it's going through from I think it was the 6th of August, it'll be roughly squaring Saturn at that point to emphasize this point that there's something that we need personally to be responsible for and not wait for some hero or even more ridiculously, some UFO or something like that to come and rescue us. And speaking of the UFOs, if I think about the Pluto-Neptune dynamic, there's a lot of really, really valid information that is worth your time to explore, to understand to what extent the UFO hype is controlled as a psyop by our friends at the CIA and the MK Ultra crowd and all of those agencies that really took control after the Second World War. And the whole thing is very much an operative to get people, and this was part of the pretext of the whole movement, to get people to be afraid collectively of an outer threat, some alien threat, or something that would pull us together and unite us as a global force. And this is to be examined. It's to be questioned because I see in some astrology circles a lot of reference to disclosure, and there's a lot of things going on with Spielberg. If you look back in the history of the whole UFO movement, Spielberg is part of the tool, best case scenario, useful idiot, otherwise fully aware of what he's doing and implicated in this desire to get people to focus on an alien threat, which had a very deep motivation for control of the populace. Last year, it was July of last year, so 2025. I did a video on the War of the Worlds. One of my viewers said I was reading clickbait with the title, but it's literally called The War of the Worlds. And this um, radio program from 1938, which Orson Welles read. It was an H.G. Wells story about this alien force that came and landed. And Orson Welles did a radio broadcast that actually, it turns out, was a deliberate test of how much people would swallow of this story. And of course, Orson Welles, being an excellent orator and reading with a lot of enthusiasm and passion, was able to get people to be quite terrified. People were running out in the streets and really hysterical. It was really the talk of the town. And this is going back, 90 years or so, so 80 plus years. If you want, you can find that video on my channel, July 2025, War of the Worlds, not a clickbait title, an actual title of a radio program. And why I'm describing that was because in that video, I was saying that that particular time last year, which is coming back to us this year, was ripe for issues that will have something to do with false flag events or events that are things that are not what they appear to be and that are designed to elicit a particular response. And this is going to be the case this year. And that's again a reference now back to this Capricorn full moon, which says, look at where you can take care of what is your responsibility and don't get drawn into the hype and emotionality of what's going on around you. Capricorn is extremely pragmatic. Dinner's on the table, the shoes are on the feet. It may not give you hugs as you go to bed. It may not even give you a hug until you're 40 years old. It's just the way the Capricorn moon is that it's going to get shit done and it's going to do the right thing without getting riled up about it, without emotionality. And this is where we need to practice releasing hype and emotionality and therefore also disconnect from stuff that is going on that is purely mental masturbation and stuff that is there for entertainment or for our distraction, more importantly, from what is essential. What is essential? Essential is our life in this moment, what you are, your breath that you're taking right now. This is essential. And to keep having this awareness of something that's going to come and the government that's never lied to you before, and surely is not lying to you about this now, is about to reveal stuff about these things. And it's just like, really? Really? So again, we're coming up into this phase in early July with Jupiter opposing Pluto. It was conjunct Pluto in that three times, in fact, in 2020. So it's in that opposition phase. And again, those of you who've got my annual or who read my overview, which you can find on my blog still, if you don't want to buy the annuals, you'll also see that in my blog at I think it was November or something of last year, October, November, which was the annual overview for 2026, where I described this dynamic now of the opposition of the cycle from 6 years back, where Jupiter is opposing Pluto. And there's going to be some element of a recall around that time of control and oppression and the stay-at-home orders and the what you can do with your money order and what you can do with your mouth and your speech order. And Jupiter is now opposing all of that. So this, I had said at the time, was potential for issues around the signature, let's say, of digital currency, digital ID, things that are going to be imposed in a way that we can't find an outlet for. And this is why we need to be so self-sufficient, self-reliant. And that's all the more so because we've got Mars in Gemini with Uranus at the time that Jupiter is moving in. So that's another indicator as it's trining Pluto, as Jupiter opposes. That's part of this basket configuration. So I think I've said everything that I wanted to say here in the general sense. Um, it is something to really reflect on for all times, to really see where do I get emotionally triggered? Where can I pull it back and just be here now with the bare bones of life in this Capricorn moon way that says there's something I need to do. And maybe it's just like the dishes. I'm just going to do the dishes. And you take it right back to this extremely practical. Capricorn is eternally practical and useful, utilitarian effort. And this will be the realization. What can I bring to the table that is practical, useful, non-hysterical, that is based in reality, that is grappling with the things that I know to be true and not going off into all kinds of tangents that say, there is something separate from us that's going to be here. Crash landing somehow always near military bases. Fascinating that, isn't it? They bring this advanced technology and they always crash their aircraft by military bases in the US. Anyway, so all of this is tied back long ago to the Second World War, and this is also part of the dynamic here as Pluto itself is starting to oppose where Pluto was at the time of the Second World War and thereafter, where, all of these agencies and all of this trickery actually started. So there'll be more on that as I come forward, and we can have a look at all those different things as we go through the next few weeks. And what I'll do right now, Aries, you're conveniently on the ascendant. I'm going to start with Aries, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant. Thank you so much for being so neat and tidy in that very Capricorn way, and that everything is just set and working really, really well. So for once, we've got Aries rising, and we'll start with you. Of course, as you know, Aries, you've got Saturn in your first house of self, and it's ruling that moon, but in turn is being ruled by a newly minted Mars in Gemini in your third house, and it's coming up to a conjunction with Uranus. So there's something about your experience of the third house decision, personal motivation, choice, your need to step up. Your Mars is your ruler. You need to step up in some way, either by speaking, communicating something, or addressing something that you need to make a decision about, or you're going to do something very practical in terms of learning something or even teaching something, and it will have an impact on the way people see you in the 10th house way. This could be in terms of your personal ambition, could be in terms of parenting, could be in terms of your profession if you still are in that dynamic, or in the work that you do and the way that you contribute outside the home. Vocation, if it's not about profession, even if you're retired, this is what you do outside the home while you're retired. This is not, the 10th house is not about gainful employment. That's the sixth house. A lot of times I get in the comment things like, I'm retired, so therefore none of this applies to me. And of course, I've tried to say it a million different ways. It's your social status, it's your parenting status, it's you and your relationship with your parents. All these different things apply to the 10th house. And this is very personal now to you, Aries. Of course, on the opposite end of that, we have the sun in your fourth house with Mercury retrograding. And Mercury, remember, is the ultimate dispositor of this whole dynamic. And Jupiter is in the very last, the critical degree. I didn't mention that earlier, but it's at this unstable degree. In fact, so is Mars at this very unstable 0 degree point of Gemini. And so there's something that you're recognizing is coming from your place of safety and security. The introduction applies to you directly. And then the Mercury retrograding there will show you that. What do I need to be secure? What do I need in terms of my household or home or physical property? Or the way I'm connecting with my family, or the way I connect to life emotionally, my people, in terms of a lineage, for example, in terms of a nationhood, the people you come from. And all of this is going to be very important for you in the next 18 months as this particular cycle comes to a conclusion at the very end of 2027. So it gives you an opportunity to see how you're going to be using that Saturn in your first house to apply to what it is that you want to see happen in terms of your legacy or your role, your social status, your career, etc., all the different things that I've just enumerated. So this is a really big deal for you with your ruler Mars changing signs. Mars will be in Gemini, only leaving what did I say was the 11th of August. So it's there right through till the 11th of August. And it's a lot of stuff to do. You're going to be busy till the 11th of August because that's a busy house, the third house. This It might have something to do with siblings, particularly brothers in the case of Mars, but not only. And it could be something that has to do with a need for readjustment or a need to clarify things, or there may be some incident or something that needs your attention that may be in the life of a sibling and not necessarily in your life or in the extended family story. Or with your group of friends, some people that you hang out with, your golf buddies, your coffee pals, your dog walking friends, whatever those people are. That's your third house. Um, and of course, the third house is also your local space. So this can also be where you're realizing there's something here in terms of your bigger ideas of what you want to accomplish in your life. And maybe there's part of that that requires you taking action in a community-oriented way, for example. And I've said that also about Pluto many times before, that what you're here to look at and accomplish, especially as Saturn is ruling Pluto as well in Aquarius here. So both the 10th and the 11th are ruled by this Saturn in your house of self. That this is really about how you're reaching into not only your future, but society at large. So something that you are able to really do, take action on and get busy with. Don't hesitate to sit down and breathe a bit, Aries, before you sort all this stuff out. Don't jump in. You won't be able to anyway because of the Saturn stationary. It's going to make you feel like you've got rocks on your head, and that's not a bad thing. So just slow and steady wins the race. Be that tortoise and not the hare. All right, Aries, I'll see you in the next video. And then we'll move forward by hour, not day. There we go. And now we've got Taurus, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant on the Taurus, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant on the Ascendant. And your ruler Venus, I didn't talk about earlier, but it's because her role is a little bit less influential at this particular moment, although she is ruling Chiron. Please watch that video separately, but she's in your fourth house. So there's something here about security and about how you're feeling about things that is part of this bigger story as well, maybe home, house and home, and your own need for being quiet and secretive or cozy in your own space. And then we have Jupiter, Mercury, and the Sun in your third house of siblings and your local space and the things that you need to reflect on in terms of what you need to say, what you might need to take action on in terms of a communication. Is it a contract? Is it something that needs expression? Is it a I don't know, will that you're writing up that you need to update, for example? Is it a contract for work? Is it a passport? You need to get your passport sorted. All of these things are going to be coming through in that third house way. And maybe communication from the heart is also a part of this moment where Mercury in Cancer, in a very sensitive part of your chart, is going to be retrograding. And so you'll have an opportunity perhaps to go over the past or go over something that's already happened, mull it over in your mind, or communicate something that is already happening or has happened in the past that you want to resolve. And that can even be with reference to yourself by simply writing in a diary, for example, not necessarily having to verbalize, although that would be a very good thing. Taurus is not known for verbalizing precisely because Cancer is on the third house and you tend to kind of shy away from communication and having to say the difficult things. But this could be an opportunity for you to do that. Um, Mars and Uranus are in your second house of self-worth and money and also family. And there's Mars is squaring the nodal axis. Uranus is also squaring the nodal axis. They're coming together closely, closer and closer in the first week of July. So you could expect something very surprising or important around family or around money issues, around investing, potentially around things that have to do with your children. Mercury, which is in the third house, again, of extended family, but also siblings and so on, nephews, nieces, and so on, is where the North Node is. And then the South Node is in your house of children, your house of creativity, etc. So all of these things could be part of this dynamic as well, where there's a square here, something new and shocking is coming up, and this is ruled by this retrograde Mercury. So what you're noticing, what you might need to communicate about is this thing that might be surprising, shocking. In fact, it will be, whatever the thing is. And especially so if you have these degrees in your chart already being contacted. So the first 5 degrees of, I'm going to say any sign, because like this is where we are right now. It's the first 5 degrees of pretty much any sign. In terms of the full moon, it's happening in your ninth house of your vision for yourself, your vision for life itself. It can also be with reference to your father, or father figures or teacher figures. Your desire for self-improvement is the ninth house. Your faith and your religion or your sense of what you believe in philosophically in life. And you're realizing something about this. This will be part of the Mercury retrograde dynamic because the third house is also the mind, what you're thinking about. and how you think about it and how you mull it over or communicate that. And then Saturn is in your 12th house of what happens either behind closed doors or in faraway places or in distant lands or distant times, times that are not current. It can be your spirit guides, for example, it can be your ancestors, things like this. And so there's a tie-in here with the lunation itself. This is broadly squaring. It's a pretty um, wide square. It's 6 degrees, but it's still something you can refer to. And then, of course, Neptune is also squaring the lunation, which can bring you to a place of more compassion or understanding around certain things that might have to do even with your own self. Saturn in the 12th can also have you recognizing patterns of unconscious behavior, things that come up that you're not really able to recognize as choices, but you see that it keeps recurring. And Mercury retrograde in the third house of the mind can help you with this dynamic as well. So that helps the desire for, or this the notion that there's something you're aware of needing improving or needing to, and I say needing, it's coming from this notion of what you expect, maybe a desire for a personal growth or personal expansion into something that feels meaningful. And that's the Capricorn moon that's up there reflecting in your ninth house. Trinal to you, by the way, which is quite supportive. You do have Chiron in your first house. I'm not going to go through that because I did a whole video on that, and I invite you to listen to that, especially because it's you that it's concerning right now. But here we just have time really to focus on the lunation. So your future is, for this moment, a big part of this story of what it is that might need to be changed or what will be changed that might have to do with also your personal values, but also belongings, possessions, etc. And that is because of the square from Mars Uranus to this north node. Jupiter is ruling the north node in the last gasp of Cancer, and it will move into Leo in your fourth house. So you're then going to have a year of Jupiter in your fourth, and that will be another video coming very, very soon. All right. So make the most of this, Taurus. Wish you all the best. You're one of those pragmatic people that can do a lot with this Capricorn moon and also with the times to come. So this would be a good time for people to come to you and lean on you a little bit and your wisdom, your earthly wisdom, pragmatic nature. Okay, Taurus, see you in the next video. So Gemini, this is a very interesting time for you because you've got Mars now at the time of this full moon, which is in your eighth house. Mars is in your first house, and it's going to be quite interesting. I'd like to hear from you. Come back next week and tell us what the heck is going on in your life as Mars is conjoining Uranus and squaring the nose. So you're going to be in the thick of some very major change here, ruled by this Mercury retrograde. So Mercury, as it's retrograding, is going to be showing you aspects of what this represents for you in your first house, in your house of self, in your house of how you show up, including your physicality or even your physical health. Mars rules also your sixth house of illness and obstacles and health and other dynamics like day to day schedules and routines and things that you need to keep yourself well, keep yourself strong. And it's there in the first house. So this would be another thing to look out for, any health issues that might need your attention. The moon itself is showing up in your eighth house, which is the house of your more deep psychology or your place of what you understand through potential fears or family trauma or painful events and crises and things that have happened in the past or that are going through your experience now. This can be about emotional intimacy, sexual or psychological intimacy. The eighth house is also the house of the occult. And this can also have you realize something in this particular phase. Remember, in the beginning of the video, I gave you all the dates for this. The phase of this cycle of this lunation might have you really focusing in on occult stuff, meditation, the hidden stuff, hopefully not the UFO stuff. Um, and again, I'm not saying that there's no aliens. I'm just saying they're not what we're told they are. They're not little gray men and so on and so on. And and nobody has found a body. These are crazy ideas. Anyway, so that could be something that brings your attention, and that is something that holds your attention through this cycle, where you want to learn more, you want to dig in and understand more about what this all represents. The eighth house is also money that you receive from other people, and Jupiter is in your second house of money, and it rules your seventh house of other people. So it could be very favorable that there may be some realization about what you could receive from other people, or through marriage, or that your marital partner is making you aware of the state of finances, for example, or the state of affairs in every sense of that word. So, and I'm not saying your partner's cheating on you. I'm just saying there were realizations around all of these things. And so Mercury is a big player in this lunation. You'll hear that in the introduction. And that is where we find Mercury in the second house of your values, your money, your self-worth, your family, everything that supports you. And there's something that is requiring your attention, that you need to go back over things. You might need to revise your finances. Mercury is your ruler. And when your ruler is retrograde, there's something about you that also needs to pay extra attention to how you're going about your life in a general sense. So earlier this year, you had a Mercury retrograde at the top of your chart where the North Node is still for the next month or so. And so a lot of your focus then in sort of March time was with Mercury showing you the way through your, let's say, personal ambition and career, etc. And now Mercury is retrograding in your second house of money and income, and the things that you have at your disposal. So this would be the place to put a lot of attention. Mercury is ruling the South Node in your fourth house. So that's something maybe to do with family, or again, issues around security and so on. And Jupiter is ruling the North Node 10th house for you. And so the two of them are together. They didn't perfect the conjunction, but they're very much together at this time. So there's a lot going on in your mind right now around your role in terms of maybe being the breadwinner, or what's the work situation, where was the home situation. All of these things can be really uppermost in your mind. And Mars being in a square from that, in a really strong square, almost a perfect square at this time, and Uranus still being in a square, and it has been throughout June, is something that requires a lot of adjustment. Something will change for sure. You're not going to be staying the same after these couple of weeks here. And the lunar cycle can be an interesting one for you to track, simply because that is happening in a way that reveals what's going on a little bit behind the scenes in that eighth house way. Maybe it has to do also with overcoming fears of the future, because Saturn is in your 11th house of the future, ruling that eighth house. It also rules your ninth house, where Pluto is in a trine to Mars and Uranus, is about your sense of higher purpose in life, also potentially around father figures as well. Saturn also is in that house of gains. So there may be something that is literally financial that you need to sort out right now, or an issue around work, or the way you work, or the kind of money that you're earning with work, and what the future holds with all of that. And Mercury retrograde would be the opportunity throughout July and into August for you to get yourself on track in terms of what resources do you have at your fingertips. It's your ruler. So that's like you being like your little ambassador that goes through the chart. Um, so yeah, interesting times for you, obviously, Gemini, because of that conjunction with Mars and Uranus, and you do have Mars in your first house right through till the 11th of August. So do keep in touch. Let us know how you're doing, and hang in there with whatever the changes are that are underway for you. And you do have that mutability and that cheerful side to you, so you'll be able to use that, and you keep your flexible self uh, adapting, as let's say, as you go. All right, I'll speak to you in the next video, and we'll just have a look now at Cancer, where we find the Mercury retrograding, and which is where we are in opposition to the Moon that rules Cancer. which is in the seventh house of relationships. So there's something here that can be a dynamic around partners of all kinds. This can be intimate partners, business partners, life partners, dear friends, important people, or the quality of those relationships. It can also be clients. The seventh house is a business house, and Mercury is retrograding in your first house, Cancer, as the sun is also there. This is Cancer season for the next 3 weeks after this. And that matches pretty much with the Mercury retrograde cycle. So the Cancer season is also has the flavor of Mercury retrograde in Cancer. And this is something that you can really work with in the sense of whatever was going on for you um, in March, April, or was it February, March? February, March, I think it was, when Mercury was in your ninth house, trinal to you. Mercury was retrograding there when you were looking at your higher purpose, or potentially also looking at father figures, teacher figures, people that you know from faith or other collective things that you do based on philosophy or religion or spirit, etc. And now what's coming back is what you need to change about yourself, what you need to do, how you need to revise or go over something that is personal to you, your role in a relationship, for example, your either need to correct something or need to ask for something or need to be different or do something different based on information that you are understanding throughout the cycle of this Mercury retrograde. And the lunation here, sorry, getting a little tired. Cancer, your lunation is very important always to you because the moon rules you. So lunations are always important for Cancer, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant. And the fact that it's in detriment right here is showing that there's maybe something in relationship that requires you to adapt. And I'm not saying put up with stuff that you should put up with. I'm saying adapt. So what's the adaptation? You leave, you speak up, you do something different, you get rid of the relationship, whatever the thing is, you adapt. Okay. So this is you in your house that this is all happening. Now, Saturn rules that house of relationship as well as the eighth house of marriage, and that's where you eighth house is other people's money as well, inheritances and things like that, but also dealing with crises, dealing with loss, dealing with things that come suddenly. And Saturn is up there in the 10th house of your role as an authority or parent or your own parents, authority figures of all kinds. That can be like outer authorities, social authorities, government, this kind of thing. And that is in this tense aspect with this lunation. So there's something here that might be where you're realizing the way that you're relating or the way that or with whom you're relating, and it is based on something that needs to be redefined in that 10th house way. What do you need to take responsibility for, or how do you want to go forward in this and make that different going forward? Um, and then, of course, in the 12th house, we've got Mars with Uranus. Mars just came in hours before this full moon. Or a day, let's say day before this full moon, Mars came in a day, half an hour, sorry, half a day, not even 6 hours before this lunation, Mercury retrograded, and 6 hours after the lunation, Jupiter will leave your first house. So we'll get to all that in a minute. But Mars, which is newly in your 12th house, is going to stay there until August 11th. And Mars is the exaltation ruler of your seventh house, Capricorn, but also the ruler of your 10th house of your work, your ambitions, your career, and not work in the sense of job, but in the sense of what is your mission? What's your idea of why you want to do what you do? What's the legacy you'd like to leave? And what is maybe even your reputation? Mars also rules your fifth house of children, lovers, creativity, etc. And there's something really unique going on behind closed doors or behind the scenes or underneath your awareness, which is being triggered this week as Mars conjoins Uranus and squares the nodal axis. Um, and this is something where, it's really hard to know what this is going to represent for you. It might have something to do with travel or going away for a reason that seems shocking or sudden, that may have to do with a parent, that may have to do with a loved one, a marriage partner, a career or like client related issue. I need to solve this thing. I need to do this thing. Um, Mercury retrograde in the first house can also have you going back into family matters. Of course, it's Cancer, so you're forever tied to what's going on in your family. And that's the way that it is for Cancer. And Capricorn, you have no escape valve here in this lifetime. You are always having to deal with family stuff. And this could be what that represents for you. You need to go away. You need to, or there's something happening in a clinical or an otherwise a hidden environment, like somebody has been confined for some reason. There may be something going on with a sibling. You've got the South Node in the third house, for example, as the Mercury retrogrades in your first house. Maybe you need to deal with something that is about a sibling situation or an extended family situation or a communication situation for you. Venus is in your second house of family, ruled by Sun in your first house. So actually, it can't be all bad, or it's maybe not something that you're dreading necessarily. It's maybe something that you're expecting. Venus in the second is quite nice, and she's welcoming Jupiter, which will be moving into your second house, again, just hours after this whole event is taking shape. I will come back and do a whole separate video because there's just so many moving parts here. It starts to get too diluted. But Mercury in the first house of self is also squaring Eris in your 10th, and maybe there's some aspect of what you need to say or how you want to speak differently to be heard differently, or to think through things in a different way, or organize your way of communicating in such a way that you get heard better. And that's because as Mercury is retrograding from the first house, it squares Eris, which is about how you're seen or otherwise not, or how you might be dishonored or treated in a way that's dishonorable in the 10th house or a public way, for example, or a way, through hierarchy, etc. And then when Mercury stations at 16 degrees of Cancer, it's going to square Saturn, which is up there pretty much solidly at in the 14th degree from now until well into August. So, which is squaring my moon, which is really unpleasant. For those of you who have a moon at that degree, you will know what I'm saying. Um, I'm so tired. But I can't blame Saturn. It is, it's just showing this is the thing. But this could be something that feels like now you understand where to take responsibility, what to do about that thing. By the time Mercury stations direct, Saturn is retrograding. I think it's like 3 days later, 4 days later, something like that. What is it? Um, yeah, from the 27th, 23rd of July, and then Saturn is retrograding on the 26th or 27th of July. So this is part of this dance between the two of them, figuring it out, what do I need to do, and then what do I take responsibility for? Anyway, so this moon is a really interesting dynamic for you. Do listen to the introduction because it will apply to you, Cancer, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant. Bye for now. And Leo, Sun, Moon, and Rising, of course, the Sun represents you. It's ruled by the Moon today at this Capricorn full moon, and that moon is in your sixth house. And by the way, this full moon is not yet with Jupiter in your house of yourself. That is coming 6 hours later. It's just that I'm moving the dial. So this is maybe I should go back a day and see what happens here. If I pull this back, can we still do this? Yeah, it's not really great, is it? Let me just see if I can fix this by 1 hour. I'm just trying to keep the theme, let's say, of the moon. Yes, it does work. Okay, there we go. This is what we're going to do then. Leo, mm, just for the sake of practicality. So here we have this moon and oh, that didn't work for Leo. Hang on. Boom. It's moon day. Yes, the moon is there. Okay, here we go. Leo. I'll just change this so that we know what we're looking at because you will know, but the people watching later on will not. Capricorn, full moon, and this is in your sixth house. And so Leo, sun, moon, and ascendant. The sun is your ruler, and it's ruled by the moon at this time, which finds itself in the sixth house for you at the time of the full moon, which is roughly, by the way, 2 days of time. It's not just a one and done, but it is actually at 8 degrees. Watch the introduction to find out more about that. And the fact that your sun, your light, your ruler of your chart and your ascendant is in the 12th house suggests that there's a lot of reflection that will be happening at this time. And that is all the more true because Mercury will be retrograding from this point on, and it will retrograde for 24 days. So pretty much the whole of the time that the sun, your ruler, is in your 12th house, contemplating things or maybe reflecting on the past or maybe reflecting on ancestral stories or hidden stories or unconscious patterns, maybe even self-sabotaging patterns. This is part of the bigger theme for you of this Capricorn full moon. Mercury is the ultimate dispositor because while the sun, pardon me, is your ruler, the moon itself is ruled by Saturn. Saturn is in your ninth house, which is actually very lucky for Leo rising, especially Saturn is trinal to you. And Saturn is ruled in turn by Mars, which has now just moved into the 11th house. And so now you've got Mars with Uranus, and Mars itself is in Gemini, meaning that Mercury is the ruler of that. And so that really comes back to your 12th house in several different ways. So this whole vision for yourself, the notion of your future, the sense of what it is that you need to reach out into, or how you want to take responsibility for that, or need to learn something to deal with all of that, or need to teach something for that matter, is going to be a source of reflection and contemplation, perhaps re-examination or research over the month ahead, basically, until your birthday month, if you're a Leo sun. So until Leo season, basically. And Mercury will then enter into your sign only on the 9th of August. So that work will be done ongoingly all of this time. And then by then, Jupiter will be in your first house. I'll do that in a separate video because it's quite significant for you. And the fact that the moon is in your sixth house tells us a lot about your concern or your need to focus on actual practical details. You are practical. One of the reasons that Leo has that signature of integrity is the rulership of the sun, because the sun always shows up. The sun is always there, doesn't complain, doesn't ask for any thanks or anything, just keeps shining, radiating. And the other reason is that your sixth house is where we find Saturn ruled Capricorn. So you show up, you're on time, you do your thing. I'm not saying you necessarily, because of course it depends on your chart, but the Leo signature, the Leo archetype is that you're there, you're on duty. Yes, sir, right here. And the moon is there. So this is what your realization is at this time. What is it that is my duty? What's my responsibility? What is the thing that I need to take care of? Now, the dynamic around this can also be where you recognize that you need to realize where you don't need to take responsibility for certain things. Maybe you have assumed that responsibility. Sometimes Leo can take over things with a need to feel in the lead. This is part of the Leo signature too. It's a need to feel like the leader, doesn't like to follow. But also the fact that you need to also recognize where you need to let other people take over, and you're not necessarily responsible and certainly not should not feel guilty for everything else. If you feel like you have to rush in and clean up everybody else's mess, for example, that would be a good time to reflect on that Mercury retrograde energy that says, let's look at all of these habits of self-undoing, the things that I'm doing that really are undermining my happiness and my well-being. Um, Yes, I've done another video on Chiron, so I'm not going to talk about that, but it's important for you because it's angular. It's going into your 10th house. And you'll find that Chiron comes back to exactly this point by the end of this cycle, 18 months from now. Do watch the introduction for that. So this dynamic of Mars, Uranus in your 11th house is square the nodes that are ending up their journey since the 11th of January, 2025 in your eighth house of other people's money, second house of your money or your resources, your needs, your values, etc. That's changed a lot in this dynamic. And of course, Jupiter rules your eighth house. So that's been a big part of this story. And it rules your fifth house of self-expression. And maybe that's also been something where you're recognizing patterns of behavior, emotional repression or need to express that are part of where you're not able to fully express what you need to. And that Mercury retrograde again comes to the rescue in the sense that you've got now 3 weeks plus to look at all that and how it impacts your health, perhaps mental health, physical health. The moon is in the sixth house of illness, health. Um, Jupiter, Mercury, Sun, your ruler in the house of confinement. So if there are health issues that are like stress related, for example, is it stress about taking on too much or taking on responsibilities again for things that are not your problem? You know that expression, not my circus, not my monkeys. Um, riff on that, for example. Um, I think I've said it here for you. Of course, you've got Pluto across the way. I would address that more with reference to Jupiter coming in because these things are happening boom, 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 and it just becomes too much. And I'll clear it up by saying in a separate video what is coming down the pipeline for you with Jupiter coming into your sign, which I think you will enjoy quite a lot for the next year. I think I've covered it here for you. Good luck, Leo. I'll see you in the next video. So Virgo, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant. Let's see if we can move that moon along. Virgo, let's go. Yeah, there we go. Okay, we'll just skip it back. There we go. Virgo is a big sign, so you can keep going. So Virgo, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant. You have this moon in your fifth house. The fifth house is about your creativity, your self-expression, the way you express yourself in terms of what you do and how you do it. And of course, that's one of the reasons Virgo feels like a Virgo is because Saturn rules your fifth house, so there's a little bit of a self-limitation there. There's a sense of seriousness about the way you go about things, and that doesn't mean you don't have a great sense of humor. It just means that you take things seriously. You present well, let's say, Virgo. This is trinal to you. It's another earth sign. And so maybe you're looking at that. How am I presenting myself? Maybe there's a big sense of what needs to be paid attention to. Now, the nodal axis is here between the 1st and the 7th for one more month, roughly. And this has been a big shift in your relational dynamic, and that can include business partnerships, and all the more so since on the 26th of April, you had Uranus moving into your 10th house, and for all of June, it's been squaring the nodes, and now Mars is moving into your 10th house of work in terms of your ambition and your more career-oriented work or vocational type efforts and the way that you want to be seen and the way that you achieve things, your social success, your social status. It's all the 10th house, and it's being squared by the nodes that are moving through your first and second house axis. And your ruler is Mercury, which at the time of this lunation is retrograde. So it doesn't show up here. It's just about to be retrograde because I had to switch the clock face around to get things to line up without losing all the planets. So I didn't have to keep describing where everything was in theory. So the moon should be at 8 degrees, sun should be at 8 degrees, and just keep in mind that your ruler is retrograde at the Capricorn full moon. Do watch the beginning because it will tell you a lot about that. And the fact that your ruler is retrograding in the sign of your future, in the house of your future, sorry, and in Cancer, which is part of the representation of that, which is ruled by this moon. It says, I have a lot of things I need to recognize are going to contribute to my future based on what I realize, Capricorn Moon in your fifth house, I can bring to the table. This is how I express myself. These are the things I need to be pragmatic about. This is the way I need to create. Do I need to start a business? Do I need to sharpen up my business? Mars, which is at the top of your chart, rules your third house of business and your eighth house of money that comes through clients and also money that comes through partners, for example, business partners or life partners. That's also referencing intimacy and so on. And that's where we find Saturn, by the way, which is the ruler of this moon, which in turn is ruled by this Mars, and which in turn is ruled by this retrograde Mercury, which in turn is ruled by the moon. So the whole thing keeps going round and round. But the focus here is really this Mercury. The focus here is Mercury is doing a lot of work at this time because Mercury is ruling this Mars and Uranus at this time, as well as the South Node in your sign. So it's time to really step up into using your craft, using your skills, using what's required of you in terms of taking a new level of responsibility or taking, let's say, the bull by the horns, if you like, in terms of your way of presenting as an authority or the way that you take, how you reference your direction in life, your ambition. Pluto is in your sixth house, and I've been telling you for 3 years, more than 3 years already, your work is changing. It's not going to be whatever it was before, and especially since Uranus first moved into your 10th house in July through November of 2025. That's when I was telling you, prepare for change, prepare for your work to change, prepare for your career to change, prepare for retirement. Who knows? And this is the moment now. This is the moment that hopefully you prepared for. And if you didn't prepare for it, you now have the Mercury retrograde to really hunker down and focus on what is coming into my future. What's the thing I need to know that I need to do that is based on this moment, this understanding of what's coming through and how I want to show myself, how I want to reach out into who I am or express who I am or be in an entrepreneurial story, for example, or improve on that, for example. And this could also be about having children. Quite literally, Mercury does represent that. You have Jupiter also, which represents pregnancy, children, etc. And the sign of the mother. That can be one of those stories. And the fifth house is children, where the moon is, that rules all that. That will apply to some of you. Um, so many things to say. And of course, I would need to see your natal chart to really be more specific about that. But I think this is a time where you really need to sit down, literally pen and paper, and go over what you need emotionally, how you feel secure about your future, where the insecurities are showing you what you need to do creatively to find, resources to take you forward into the future. Um, Don't worry about this. It has to be this way. You have to go through this change. This metamorphosis is going to take you into a different place. So work with what your deepest skills are. Don't let yourself go into emotionality. This is what I was saying in the beginning, and this is the potential. One of the potentials for Virgo rising is to become a little bit overly preoccupied, overly anxious. You've got, Uranus or Saturn ruled Aquarius on the sixth house of health, and that can make you a little bit anxious, inter alia. So, okay, I'm going to leave it there, and do let me know in the comments what's changing for you, because there's no way things are not changing for you, dear Virgo. And just go with it. It's going to be really, really great, and it's going to be about managing or planning for or having a new vision for your future as all of this is unfolding for you. Um, And by the way, with Saturn in your eighth, I've already mentioned this, as Saturn has been in your eighth now since the middle of 2025, and then it came back in February 2026. This is a time where you may feel like, "Ugh, there's no resources available for me. I have to do this on my own." And yes, indeed, you do. It doesn't mean that you won't in future find more resources. It means that at this particular moment, resources are being challenged. You won't be easily receiving things from others. You have to confront your fears and take over responsibility for that, and also for anything that feels scary or crisis laden or conflict ridden in your eighth house of intimacy. Okay. And that's also, by the way, astrology and the mystery schools of life. So you can also draw on that. With Saturn going through the eighth house, you can really master those topics and really examine all of those different things and pull out the real best of all of it and see, for example, the UFO scam uh, is a psyop. All right, I'll leave it at that, and I will see you in the next video. And so for Libra, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant, the lunation is in your fourth house of home, your sense of your emotional security, what home feels like to you, maybe property as well, things to do with actual land and housing. Family and lineage will be part of this story and what's going on in all of that. Your ruler is in the 11th house of the future, and Venus, your ruler, is ruled by the sun, which is in your 10th house, and of course, part of the opposition that creates this full moon. So the sun is in your 10th house, opposing the moon in your 4th house, which makes the full moon in Capricorn, as it's the reflected light of the sun. And so that's a big part of this story because it bounces back and forth in the angular houses for you, meaning that this is going to be a structural change for you. You're going to notice something about relationship, about home or family, property, housing, career potentially, relational status. All those things are going to become extremely important. And not just now, but this is part of the bigger cycle. As I said, it's a 3-year cycle with the lunation. You'll hear that in the introduction. Your exaltation ruler is Saturn. Saturn is very happy in your sign, much less happier in Mars's sign, Aries, which is your relationship house. And so there might be quite a lot that needs your attention in the relationship sector. There may be a feeling that you're not really getting support in relationship. There may be a feeling that your relationship itself is becoming a challenge, or it's something that you need to work harder at, or that you wish that you were getting more support than your partner, business partner, spouse, etc., is actually able to provide for you. Um, and it's that Saturn that rules that moon, but in turn, Saturn is ruled by Mars, which is up here with Uranus in your 9th house, a trine to you. And that creates a grand air trine, especially if you've got something 0 to 5 degrees of Libra, that's pretty impactful for you. It's going to create a grand air trine that fits into the whole thing of July, which I'll come back on with a separate video because there's too many other details to keep going through. And and Pluto is in the 5th house of self-expression. It's been there over 3 years, and we've had this conversation, Libra. So I won't keep going through that, and you'll hear it again when I come through the outer planet stuff with the moderns. But nonetheless, this is significant because Mars is part of this lunation dynamic in a couple of different ways. It's by exaltation rulership, but also by rulership of Saturn. And then the fact that Mars itself is ruled by Mercury, which is in your 10th house of your marital status, your social status, your ambition, your career, your reputation, the legacy that you might like to leave. Parenting, what is your role as a parent? Do you have to deal with your own parents? Do you want to become a parent? All of these things are going to be impacted by the Mercury retrograde, which is happening at the same time as this full moon. Now, the full moon has not perfected. Mercury stationed retrograde 6 hours before, and we are currently at this position about 12 hours before the lunation. So just to give you, or maybe 8 hours. So I had to move the chart. So you'll see that it shifted a little bit, but I didn't want to lose the moon. So here we are. Point being that Mercury is retrograde at the time of this moon. And so it's talking to you or asking you to look into your sense of personal ambition, but also including in that is your role as a parent, or again, the dynamic of parenting, or your sense of what your partnerships, your marriage, especially, or your business partnerships, or your relationship with higher ups and bosses and people like that. What is that all about? And is that working for you? This is about security. Always going to be something to do with emotional security. And again, we can think in terms of financial security as well. There may be some kind of sudden change in the direction of where you think your life is going. Because Mars is coming into your 9th house, it rules your house of values, but also money, as well as your house of relationship. And it's squaring the nodal axis, where the nodes are really in the last month, let's say, of the passage between your 6th house of work and health and the 12th house of skiving off work and undermining your health, and also what is hidden and what is behind the scenes or unconscious in the dream world, for example. And then this trigger here with first Uranus and then Mars squaring all through June. Uranus has been squaring the nose, and now Mars since the 28th of June has been squaring the nodes, it's really emphasizing this sense of what is my purpose and meaning. This can also be related to issues around teachers or you as a teacher, father figures, religious figures, like counselors or astrologers. Eighth house, ninth house is both astrology. So maybe you're realizing something here that allows you now to see, okay, this is the thing I need to take action on. This is the direction I want to go. Mars is the direction, it's the aim, it's the goal, let's say. And it's ruling your second house. So there's something here very strong about your values, and also maybe a need to earn because your ruler Venus is in the 11th house of gains as well, or a way to network in a way that improves your overall earning potential. So really, this is about the foundations of your life in so many ways, and be pragmatic about that. Be really clear and pragmatic about it. If you're going through difficult times, keep going, and just know that that is always in flux. Things are really heavily in flux this year, and be that resource of, the deep resourcefulness that you carry within you, which is the Saturn ruled fourth house. It's like, okay, let's carry on. Keep smiling, soldier on. This is the Libra signature of having Saturn ruling the fourth in Capricorn. All right, good luck with that, Libra. I will come back and we'll talk about Jupiter, which is leaving your 10th house now and going into your 11th house of the future, and that will help brighten things up, I think, considerably as well. All right, speak to you then. Scorpio, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant. This moon is actually in the house of the joy of the moon. So the moon in Capricorn, although it is in detriment, is in a very comfortable place for the moon, and the sun itself is in the house of its joy. So everybody's in a more or less good place to do the work that they're set out to do. So the moon is about thinking, it's about the mind, the field of the mind, the memory, and the awareness of all of that. And in the third house, it's very much about those things. The third house does represent the mind and your connection to communication and thinking about things and understanding things and communicating with people in your local space, your neighbors or people online, or how you write things, how you teach things, how you're practical. So here, you again are eminently resourceful, Scorpio, and that's because you have Saturn ruled Capricorn on your third house of willpower and determination and making decisions and going through change. And that's a cardinal sign. So you're okay to change, but it's going to be like when it's necessary. I'll change when I have to change. Now the moon is showing you what is the change that is coming up that you realize now is necessary. Saturn, which is ruling that third house, is in your sixth house, also ruled by Mars. And so Mars, your ruler, is in your eighth house. So there's something here that you recognize that might be around overcoming fear or issues around other people's money, your marriage, if that's part of this, or money that you get from clients, money that comes to you from different sources that are not necessarily directly earned. So it also can be things that are coming through money that you earn through passive income, um, or inheritance, stuff like that. And it doesn't always have to be about money. It can also be about some kind of psychological or more psycho-emotional awareness. That's also possible that you might be having a realization of something that is also giving you a sense of what it is that you need to then realize you are responsible for, that you want to do differently with a choice, or the determination is coming through this moment in time that you're recognizing. Mercury is retrograding in your ninth house of your self-growth and development, of your higher potential or your higher purpose for life. Your sense of this is the Dharma house, this is where you feel this. Why am I alive? Why do I want to do what I do? What motivates me in life? The house of the road to God is another way of expressing that, where you feel like there's something bigger than me in this world. And Mercury is retrograding through that. So you might be tested a little bit at this moment where you're wondering, is there a God? Does anyone have my back? What is my purpose? This might also be because of that Saturn in your sixth house with Neptune also there, that may have broken up your work. career even, and having a sense of I don't do this thing anymore, or I can't do this thing anymore, or they won't let me do this thing anymore, and now what? And this is part of the re-identification with purpose. And that's this whole month of July. It's great help for you. It's going to be very supportive. All of the Mercury retrogrades are in water this year. So they're all very supportive to you. And the next one coming, October, November, is your Mercury retrograde in your house of self. So this gives you the vision, and then you get to focus on yourself as we close out the year. And then I will talk about Jupiter moving into your 10th because that's really significant also for you, Scorpio, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant. But I will do that in a separate video because it's too much to cover with all of this stuff. And my dog needs to go for a walk. And we're only on Scorpio. So, right. I think I've said it all here. Oh, Mars, yeah, your ruler, it's all squaring the nodes as well. So this is where things are going to be shifting quite a lot for you. That's another video again where the nodal axis is shifting. But for the moment, the south node is still in that process of saying, well, I thought things would be this way, or that was where I thought the money was coming in from, but it's not that anymore. And here with the North Node, it's been very much more about what you're contributing or how you're reaching out into what you love and what you want to do and trying to fulfill that sense of self-expression. And here's that Mars Uranus going into the eighth house. It might be something that there's a deep realization about. It could be a psychological realization, could be a realization around what has been holding you back for, if it has been the case. Um, it can also be a realization around childhood trauma. These things sadly happen far more than we realize, and this can also be something that brings that to your awareness or that you realize what to do about it. Your ruler is there. So this is about action. Mars is about strategizing and knowing what to do about it. And this will give you insights as well. I will come back and talk more about this because it's also part of this configuration, which is so rare, this basket configuration, which is being triggered in July and just keep growing every time planets move through the early sort of 0 to 5 degree zone of all the different signs. All right, Scorpio, I will leave it at that. You are focusing forward on your life purpose, meaning. What is the meaning of life? Watch Monty Python's Meaning of Life of Brian, and maybe you'll get some tips. All right, I will see you in the next video. Bye for now. Sagittarius, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant. This lunation is in your house of money and your family, in the second house of your self-worth, your values, the things that are important to you, but also what you need to go through life in a material sense, how you manage money, how you manage your possessions, what that means to you. Do you even care anymore? Have you had a turning of relationship around possessions? Especially, this is the theme of this cycle that has already been ongoing for 18 months, and it will close out in 18 months. And this particular cycle may have had you dealing with family issues, may have had you dealing with what is there supporting you, and that may not have been very easy. A part of this cycle will have been when Saturn was in your fourth house. So that will have been a heavy beginning to this story. And now, um, from mid 2025, Saturn moved into your fifth house. So for the beginning of this cycle, Saturn was in your fourth house. And that was a heavy time. I know many Sag clients and friends. It's not been an easy ride at all. You put on a lovely, bold, happy face, but it's not been easy for sure. And Saturn now in your fifth house is getting you to feel more serious about how you want to, let's say, solidify what you know or how you express yourself in a way that is it's trining you. So there's something very lasting and favorable about this dynamic. That can also be where there's an issue around children that needs your attention, or that your children themselves are going through some difficulty that you then need to step in and help with. Or there's an issue around the principle of children. Do we, don't we? Do I want them? Do I not want them? Can I have them? Can I not have them? These kinds of things. With Mars ruling the fifth house, this can often be an issue. Same thing for Cancer rising. The issues of dynamics around children and challenges around that. It's not the only thing, obviously, but this is one potential because Saturn is there and ruling the second house, which represents family and values and your self-worth and so on. Mars is in the seventh house of relationship, and that's angular to you. Very important dynamic at the moment because both Mars and Uranus are squaring the nodes, and Uranus has been squaring the nodes for a month. And so your relational energy is changing really, really strongly. Even the way that you relate to people, but also the people themselves are very, very different. And Mars is playing a role in all of this dynamic. You'll see that in the introduction. And then we have Mercury itself retrograding in your eighth house, where you've had for a very long time Jupiter, your ruler, going through, and now finally Jupiter is going to be in your ninth house. And actually, I think that's going to be easier for you. I'm going to do a whole separate video on that, and I will explain why. It's going to be much easier, even though Jupiter is exalted in the eighth, which can represent for Sagittarius this feeling of being able to soldier on and, carry on through difficulties. The eighth house is difficulties, crises, challenges, intimacy in general as well. Anything that puts you in a position of feeling a little bit exposed or vulnerable, from one extreme to even more pleasant sort of sexual relationships and these kinds of things that are still putting you in a position of vulnerability, but hopefully with a lot more pleasure attached. And Jupiter has been there, but will be leaving on the eve of this full moon. So there's a big shift in energy, but it's based on something that you're already realizing here around money, your self-worth, what supports you, where you need to ask for support, Sag. So this is part of your shtick here, is that your whole thing is, I do this myself. I go it alone. I don't ask for help. And that's because Capricorn is there on the second. I'll sort this out myself. Thank you very much. So this would be a great time to review how you ask for help. Let's go over the conversation. Let's go over the questions. Let's go over the issue. Can we have an intimate tete-a-tete with the lover or the psychologist, whoever it is, your best friend that you need to talk to, and review some stuff. Go over things that may be coming through the family, maybe coming through the past, maybe coming through memories of really critical, difficult times that you're now realizing and you're wanting to work through. And Mercury retrograde will help you work through that. I think that kind of sums it up for you. Big change at this time, and I will be speaking to a lot more in depth around Jupiter because you are very strongly concerned with that, as will be Pisces because of the rulership. Jupiter rules Sagittarius, and it also is conjoining this Mercury, so it's going to be that last flavor of using that insight, using this awareness to go back over things and review what needs to be reviewed in this eighth house way. How you share resources, how you connect with people intimately, what you receive from other people. Do you like astrology? Do you want to become an astrologer? These kinds of things. This is the eighth house too. Tarot, occult stuff, astrology, psychology, therapy, all those things. All right. So that's it. I will leave it at that, and I will see you in the next video. Capricorn, this is, of course, your moon. Do listen to the introduction because it does really impact you very personally, and then the whole cycle, therefore, impacts you very personally since the very end of 2024 and up until the very end of 2027. So this is obviously what you realize about yourself in dynamic relationship with other people, what you're realizing about perhaps what you need or how you need to step up and take responsibility, what it is that you want to deal with in the way that allows you to feel emotionally secure. And your relational dynamic is part of the bigger theme, which is the Mercury story. The Jupiter is just about to leave your house of relationships. So this is like the last gasp of Jupiter bringing you something better in the dynamic of what your relationship is, even if it meant that relationships ended for you, that was better for you. Jupiter is bringing you what you need and what is best for you, not what necessarily what you want. And um, Mercury here in retrograde, in that whole cycle, that is the cycle of the sun moving through your seventh house, pretty much, is going to give you an opportunity to review your relationship dynamics, your marriage, your business partner, contracts, clients, if you work in that way. Mars is your exaltation ruler. It's in your sixth house of work, schlepping, all the stuff you have to do, all the things that you need to overcome. Mars loves being in the sixth house. It works really well in the sixth house. It loves a crisis. It loves a problem. It loves to get down and deal with stuff that is difficult. And so there we've got Mars hanging in there for until the 11th of August in your sixth house with Uranus initially. And it's in a square to the nodal axis, which is between your ninth house and your third house. And I've already covered quite a lot of that for you, but in a general sense, it's really about what is new or exciting or perhaps even surprising or shocking in terms of your work or your day-to-day life, what you can expect your day-to-day life to feel like. Is there a crisis coming to a head with either staff or colleagues, or is it about a medical issue? Is there something you need to reflect on in terms of your health? Overall, I'm not saying that there is, I'm saying that's to be looked at because that would be one potential. Um, Mercury, of course, rules that sixth house, and it's going back and forth through the seventh house. And if this is some health issue, the seventh house then can represent doctors, clinicians, healers, the person you consult around the issue. And so you might be going back for consultation or testing, understanding the problem, what's going on here, and establishing the source of any issues, if there are health issues. And I would definitely use this time to get clear and to revise or review, getting a second opinion with Mercury retrograde, definitely getting a second opinion, third or fourth opinion, depending, before deciding for yourself what to do. But the fact that that's in a square to the nodes with the North Node in the third house is also a part of how you've been seeing your kind of everyday busyness, or what it is that you feel you need to organize and take responsibility for in a general sense. It's also how you communicate. Um, that's been ruled by Jupiter all this time. And so Jupiter briefly, when it first went into your third house, was in your sixth house, then it went into your seventh house. So this period of time is also part of that sixth house, seventh house dynamic of maybe the work or health dynamic and how it's impacting relationships. Or maybe it's the impact of overworking, Capricorn. Maybe it's the impact of doing too much and realizing, whoa, this doesn't work for me any longer. I need to really make different choices. That's the third house. The North Node says, I make different choices. I'm making a change. Third house is all the change, everything that changes. I'm doing things differently with my extended family, my siblings, my communication, mm, my poker buddies, whatever. That's the third house. It's your like friends that you do stuff with. My dry cleaner, whatever this thing is, it's changing, and this is coming through something that is really noticeable, particularly so after this full moon, through the first week of July, really strongly, but also the whole way through July in a general sense. Saturn is your ruler from the fourth house. Mars is ruling that from the sixth house, and Mercury's ruling that from the seventh, and then the moon is ruling all of it from the first house of yourself. And so this fourth house need to create a new foundation, establish something lasting, establish something that feels reliable based on what you need or what you are worried about, what you need to feel emotionally secure, psychologically, materially secure. That's this Saturn in the fourth house. And it's in a broad square with the lunation, and Neptune itself is also squaring the lunation. Listen to the introduction. And so there's something here about your emotional life that is being restructured, as well as your actual surroundings. This could be house, home, lineage, family, mother, parents, all kinds of different dynamics that can come through the fourth house story. Right. I think I'll leave it there, Capricorn. It's certainly going to be a reflection of you, what you need to do, how you need to step up, what you are looking at in terms of your own integrity or responsibility. Um, and maybe again, putting things down, give them back to the people who are responsible for the mess they created. Don't necessarily jump in because you feel like you should. Right. Okay, Capricorn, I will see you in the next video. Aquarius, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant. Your ruler is Saturn in the third house, ruling this lunation in your 12th house. And interestingly, your modern ruler, Uranus, is with Mars, which is also part of this dynamic because Mars rules Saturn, and Mars is being ruled by Mercury, which is here with Jupiter and the Sun at the time of this lunation. So pretty interesting times, all in all, where we have this dynamic of your rulers. I'm going to start with Saturn. I feel that's the most important ruler. Your ruler in the third house, pretty much squaring this lunation, although it's a broad angle for a square. But the fact that it's ruling this moon from the third house suggests that you have a choice to be made, or an awareness, or something you need to communicate about, or you need to learn about, some skill that might need to be developed, or some thing that you might need to teach or counsel around, which is something that comes through the awareness of whatever this sixth house topic is, which could relate to your habits or things that you're doing that are really working against your well-being or your health, your reputation, potentially. There could be something that is going on behind the scenes in terms of your dream life, the unconscious reality or the unconscious, sorry, realization, I mean, about things that are hidden from you that could be far away. So anything, if you close your eyes, that's the 12th house. Whatever is coming up when you close your eyes, that's 12th house. And it can be in your spiritual world, in your ancestral world. And then also it's anything that you can't see also with the eyes open. And it means faraway lands, people from a distance, people who are really far away. And it could be something that you're realizing there as well about a relationship that's difficult and that requires a new choice. This is where your new ruler, modern ruler rather, Uranus is in the fifth house, stirring up your relational sector in terms of romance, in terms of children, in terms of your self-expression and what you need to be happy or how you express your happiness, where the fourth house is the things that you realize you need for security and to be at peace or to be calm and happy in your own skin. And then the fifth house is, what do I do about that? How do I express all of that? And there's a lot of energy right there, trinal to you, supportive in a dynamic trine of expansion that is very active at the time of this lunation. So there may be something that comes to you through a dream. The nodal axis is squaring this Mars-Uranus conjunction. You might have creative inspiration for something where you get an awareness of, I don't know, an artistic idea or a writing idea. You know, Saturn is in the third house of writing. Something that you want to teach, you want to express, you want to share out. um, Jupiter is in your sixth house of work and it's ruling the 11th house of the stage and showing what you want to do, as well as the second house of the values and where the North Node is your money and income. So it might be that you come to real sudden realizations about ways of making money or ways of using your creativity, but it's coming through a skill. It's coming through something that you are already dealing with or you already understand, or you're deciding now I want to focus in on that and put a lot more energy and attention in that. Um, yeah, and the fact that Mercury is a very big player in all this, watch the introduction to learn that. Mercury is in the sixth house, retrograding until the end of the Cancer journey here, so till the 23rd of July. And there's an opportunity for you to review how you conduct yourself every day, how you take care of yourself. So the sixth house is your health supporting habits or your work supporting habits or even the actual work that you do and how you relate to colleagues, how you relate to your employees if you have them. Issues around pets even is the sixth house, although some people say the fifth house is pets because now people take pets almost like children as opposed to domesticated animals that are sort of, I don't know, like Mausers or something like that. Up to you to determine. And so that Mercury can be something that gives you a lot of insight over the next month, let's say certainly 24 days of the retrograde cycle, that can show you quite a lot about what you need to change or how you need to do things in your everyday life in a way that supports you, in a way that supports your work, in a way that supports perhaps also a new sense of income. Use that creative impulse of Uranus, and then especially with Mars coming in, there can be some really interesting dynamics. If you have children, if you are thinking of having children, this can also come through something that happens that is quite surprising. Can be a pleasant or an unpleasant surprise. Mars Uranus is often things that are just like, whoa, never saw that coming, but it could be literally like somebody falls off their bike or something like that. So this is, I would need to see your natal chart to say more about that. I'm not suggesting that is going to happen. But the fact that Mercury is ruling this from the sixth house and retrograding at this stage is highlighting a potential for a need for taking care of your health based on something that happens here in the sports or an activity or a hobby or your children or something like that that is central to the fifth house. You're dancing and you fall off your high heels, for example. All right, because this is part of the signification of the moon also in the 12th house, which is the house of confinement, inter alia. Um, right. I think that's it. Aquarius, I will come back and we'll talk about all the other things that are still ongoing at this very, very busy moment in time. And I'll see you next time. And Pisces, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant. This lunation is happening in your 11th house of the future, your friends, your, what do you call them? Like acquaintances. So not like good friends, but your pals, people that you share ideas with, or people that you share a motivation with, networks. It can be your audience. It can be like the people who see what you do, that like you, your fan base, if you're online, for example, something that you're realizing around that at this time. And it could be also about gains. It could be something that you're realizing around what you earn from the thing that you do. And that's especially so because Saturn, which is ruling that 11th house, is in your house of money. So you might have some insight, some intuition, some ideas around new motivations or ways of making money. Look at the beginning, watch the beginning of this, because the introduction talks about the lunar family and the dates around this cycle, which started at the end of 2024. So that could be a tie-in with that if you recognize patterns of finances that might be part of this story. The moon is also in the house of your elder sibling, if you have one, and the second house is family. And maybe you need to be there for an elder sibling, or maybe you need to um, do something for an elder sibling that you normally would not have done, or you didn't plan on, you didn't expect, for example. Certainly Mars, Uranus in the fourth house of home and family and your lineage and your living space being squared the nodes, the north node of which is in your first house and has been since January 11th, 2025. One more month of that in your first house. This square from your fourth house suggests that there's some instability or there can be an event that creates a certain amount of instability in terms of your family lineage or in terms of your like connection with your family of origin, or the family you've created, where something happens and it's a big event and something needs to take shape. And this could also be where there's an awareness of this, what this impact is on your future, for example, with the 11th house sense of future. Jupiter is in the fifth house for you for a few hours more after this full moon. And it is your ruler moving into the sixth house. I'll do a separate video about that, but it's conjoining Mercury, which is retrograde in your fifth. So the first Mercury retrograde happened in your sign earlier this year. I think it was February, March, and into April. And now the Mercury retrograde is in your fifth house of your creativity, your children, your romance, your business, again, if you're an entrepreneur, issues to whatever it is that you're doing in terms of hobbies, sports, the things that you love. And Mercury is retrograding there. So you might be re-examining all of those things. You need to go, like me, I'm a Pisces Sun and Stellium, and I need to go to the gym because I'm not doing any sports. So now I've got to figure out how to go to the gym and build up muscle that I just have been dissolving as I sit here in front of my computer. Maybe you're there with me. For example, and then of course, Mercury in the fifth house is reflecting on everything to do with your creative enterprise or the way that you express yourself in that very sincere, like the way you express yourself is the way you do everything you do, through what you find joyful, through what you find happy, fun or happy. Creating happiness, or you're the last sign, can you tell? And this could be a real opportunity over the course of this month, while the sun is also there in your fifth house, to really examine all those things. What do I need to express my happiness? How do I want to get out there and do something that makes me happy? It can also have you really reflecting on your children. As I said, with this aspect here with Mars, Uranus in your fourth, there may be some issue of disruption around your family of origin, or the family you've created. And this, of course, ties in then with Mercury ruling from the fifth house. It could be something about your children. Is there an issue of your children and the things that are going on in their lives that you need to attend to, for example? Or that they're going to ask you for something and you need to, go through all these things and look back over things and see how things are being done. If you're working on a creative project, I am still working on this book. It's an endless story. I have pushed the publication date now to April. That is my final publication date. But I needed to do that to give myself more space because it was getting to be too intense, too much. I'm working on it every day, but I'm just exhausted. And so that can also be you reconsidering what it is that you're doing in a creative project that you may need to restructure. And so that will be, for example, what I'm looking at in terms of restructuring how I'm doing this creative project so that I can then readapt to a new timeline because this was going to come out in August, September, and there's no way it'll be a good product if it does. Your ruler, as I said, is about to leave the fifth house, go into the sixth house. And so use this as this last inspiration, this last bit of awareness of understanding what you've gleaned over this last year and a bit, since the 9th of June, 2025, when Jupiter moved in there. And this will be the last hurrah, as it were. I'll come back and do a whole separate video on that. But this lunation is really forward-looking. Look into the future, look towards what it is that you want out of your life, how you want the future to look, and what sort of what action do you need to take responsibility for to get there? Or is this about a social connection? Or is it about a group you belong to? Or is it about money that's coming to you? Take action, take responsibility, realize what it is, and then work from that point and look at the dates coming through the introduction of all of this. All right, I wish you all the best, and I will see you in the next video. And thank you for being here. I keep forgetting to say, I know I'm supposed to say, please like, subscribe, etc., etc. I'm assuming you're intelligent enough to know that, but there we are. I've said it. And thank you for everyone who does that. And if you're still here with me, thanks as well. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.